Hey there. I'm doing this quick recording about this upcoming solar eclipse in Scorpio that's going to happen on the 24th, which is Thursday night at around 10 p.m. Pacific time. It's like 6 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So that's the moment of the greatest eclipse. Now this is going to happen in Scorpio in the nakshatra of Anuradha. So Scorpio, of course, it's a sign. It's ruled by Mars, and it's the reflective quality of Mars, which is, the planets have an external and an internal nature that's expressed through the signs. And Mars is about strength and bringing strength to us and things that strengthen us. And so when we want to feel strong in our actions and in our deeds, then Mars expresses himself through the sign of Aries. When we want to feel strong in our inner emotional life, our psychological life, it's the feminine reflective quality of Mars, which is expressed through the sign of Scorpio. So through Scorpio, we're trying to strengthen our inner emotional life. This is why Scorpio can be a painful sign, because we're the most vulnerable in our emotions. We can have a lot of ideas and feel really strong, and then, as soon as we don't feel good anymore, or we experience some emotional stress in one area of our life, it can stop everything else. That's the nature of the emotions. And so Scorpio is where we're aware of our vulnerability, and especially we're aware that when we give our heart to someone and we actually make a stake in something where we have an emotional outcome that we want, we become vulnerable, and so then we want to protect it. And so in Scorpio, we're afraid of losing those things that we've made an emotional investment in. And so we're careful of who we get involved with, and then once we trust someone, for instance, then we give them all of our heart. Sometimes it's too much. So like if a person has a lot of planets in Scorpio, they'll have this kind of thing where they're very guarded and cool and careful with 99% of the people, but then the 1% of the people that they know, they get to see everything, and they expose them to all of their emotional ups and downs, and it can be a bit too much. And then, of course, that leads to the great Scorpio quote, well, they just couldn't handle my intensity. It's like, well, actually what it is that it's not balanced, and it's a bit too much. Often Scorpio planets in that sign, we have to be careful of this kind of all or nothing, like you're either totally there or you're totally not, kind of extreme, and this kind of lack of equanimity, this lack of evenness. One of the most difficult planets for Scorpio is actually Mercury, because Mercury is the planet of that equanimity, of being detached and being flexible and being aloof somewhat, because it's more intellectual. And so that's like the Scorpio, that's like the biggest nightmare for Scorpio, is to like have their emotions all invested and involved, let's say, in someone or something, but let's say someone because it's easier, and then the other person be like, oh yeah, I can take it or leave it, blah blah, and be this kind of aloof nature. You can see this because, like, for instance, the 8th house from Scorpio is Gemini, which is that kind of aloof, kind of playful, oh, it's okay, yeah, you're all upset, but it's okay. Let's just go do this. And the kind of having fun thing. Scorpio is not really about necessarily having fun. It's about getting down to the deep, serious work of strengthening our emotional weaknesses. So we've had a lot of energy concentrated around Scorpio, really since the spring when Rahu moved into Scorpio. And now we're getting, we've had the eclipses in the Scorpio axis since then, but now this is the first solar eclipse in Scorpio. And all these energies are being really brought into the mix now, where we're really feeling this intense emotional response and reaction. We've had Mercury and Venus going through Scorpio for the last, since early November, actually the very end of October, we started feeling this shift when Mercury-Venus went into Scorpio. Actually, Mercury was defeating Venus in a planetary war in Scorpio for months, and then Mercury stationed, and now it's about to go retrograde. That's the other thing, is Mercury's gone retrograde about 20 hours before the actual eclipse starts. So, again, we're feeling a lot of real intense Scorpio energy right now anyway, so we could be a bit jacked on the extremes for the last couple of weeks, especially around areas of your emotional vulnerability. Blowing things out of proportion, imagined fears, obsessions, getting really, even sort of paranoid about those things that you really love, maybe getting taken away from you, looking for signs that you might lose it, and so you get really freaky and you might start to panic and then react and overreact and things like this. So this is a lot of the nature of what's happening these days, and this eclipse is going to be it's going to really draw out a lot of those things and actually bring more light into the situation to go into a very deeper and more mystical promise around all those things. The reason we're encountering this is because, as I say, Scorpio is the area of our vulnerabilities, and we have to get these emotional vulnerabilities under control, because this is what really keeps us attached to some outcome and some sense of control, some illusion of control. This is the biggest thing about Scorpio, is it's where we need to give up our illusion of control, because we don't control anything here. We don't control anything. I just read a quote recently that says, the bad news is you are actually falling without a parachute, free falling without a parachute. The good news is there's no ground, so you're not going to hit the ground, but you are free falling without a parachute. You have no idea where it's going. But the good news is the illusion of the ground that's going to smash you to bits is also not there. And so Scorpio is where we're trying to hang on to some control because of this fear of losing what we've become emotionally invested in. But what we need to be emotionally invested in is something more eternal, something that's not based on the ever-changing world which we have no control over. So this eclipse is a time, not just a day, but like this next 6 months, let's say, before the next eclipse in Taurus, is a time for us to really go into the unchanging nature of love and devotion, because Scorpio is based on love. It's a water sign. It's the love in our heart and the beauty in our heart that we want to be able to flow with all the time. The problem is we mistake our connection to that beauty to be something external, like, oh, this person, I love this person so much, and if they're not giving it back, I'm not going to be connected to the source of love within me. And that's not true. That's the illusion. So we try to control it and say, please keep giving me your love so I can stay connected to the life force of love in me. But that's where the problem comes in. You're always connected to it. You couldn't be disconnected, or otherwise you wouldn't be alive. And even when you're not alive in the body, you're always connected to it. That's what it is. That's the only game in town anyway. We just don't realize it. So this eclipse in Scorpio is a great time to go deeply into that. In fact, it's an Anuradha Nakshatra, which means following Radha. Radha is a devotee of Lord Krishna. So it's about bhakti and about devotion and about being a friend. Being a friend, friendliness, friendship. The deity is called Mitra, who is the god of friendliness and friendship. And it's about being a good friend rather than insist others be a good friend. And then when they're not, getting mad at them because they're supposed to do this and honor this intensity or whatever it is. Be a good friend and give and show up in that way without expectation of reward, and sink into the eternal depth of love in your heart. The other thing that's really potent is this whole eclipse is being aspected by Mars in Leo. Mars is the ruler of Scorpio, and it's in Leo, and it's aspecting this eclipse to a pretty tight degree. The eclipse is around 8 degrees, and Mars is about 12 degrees in Leo. So Mars is infusing the whole thing with all that courage. The courage of Mars is there to say, go deeper into that source of strength, that source of emotional strength. We think of Mars as being external and fighting. It's not. It's just about strength. The inner warrior, the warrior of light, the warrior of truth and love is also Mars. It's the courage to take on that deeper emotional battle. And there's often more courage in that than an external battle like fighting someone or jumping out of an airplane or some other kind of externally courageous activity. The inner courage of Mars comes through in Scorpio. That's what it's about. So you need to transform those insecurities and fears into strengths. And this eclipse in Scorpio is a great time to do it. So you can also get a quick forecast about your sign, not just this general forecast, but about your sign if you join my member site, and then you can also get some free DVD courses and stuff like that as well.